Hello, thanks for coming to my channel. So before I get into the main subject on this video, I may do a little bit more with data on my channel as I've done before, because I'm spending a bit more time now as I had long meant to do, looking at this channel, and editing a bit, deleting old videos that aren't really great in terms of sound or quality, or maybe they're a bit repetitive. What I might do, and this is time dependent, is make a video specifically for subscribers. By which I mean I will actually look at subscribers and give a name check. Um, just my way of giving all of you little thanks. Now I've got 1,886, so it might not be practically possible to read out every single name in one video. I could try, but stay tuned for that because you might hear your name being read out. Just as my way of saying thank you. Um, okay, so keeping in the theme with foreign prisoners, I spoke recently about the Chennai Six and also the release of Nazanin Zargari-Ratcliffe. Ratcliffe. Well, this video is more about the other hostage who was released, and I am calling them hostages, Mr. Anousheh Ashoori. Now, there's no question that his case has been far less covered than that of Nazanin Tagari Radcliffe. Before I get into just quoting this report from The Guardian, though, there's been a bit of a controversy over her press conference, because she appeared to be putting a lot of blame on the British government and asking the question, why wasn't she released earlier? There was even a little bit of disagreement with her husband. He thanked the British government. She disagreed. I didn't watch the whole press conference. But anyway, her the approach that she took garnered a lot of criticism online from conservatives. Including from a group called Black Boris. And basically, the gist of the way they were looking at it was that she was ungrateful. You know, how dare this woman criticize the UK when A, it is Iran that has held her prisoner, and B, it's ungrateful. Well, I think that's a little bit premature because they're ignoring a few things. Firstly, this woman has been through a terrible ordeal. And her question is legitimate. Why has it taken so long? I mean, if this was all down to the UK owing Iran money over tanks purchased in the 70s, if it all came down to money and we could have solved this at the beginning by just paying, say, Iran that money, then it is a legitimate question. Why not? Now, some might say that is blackmail, but in that case, it's if we owed Iran money and we knew that, then we should have just paid out really. The other thing is relating to the Chennai Six case. One of the sailors that was involved in that, who comes from up here in Northeast England, Nick Dunn, he's also been very critical of the British government and their handling of their case. Not, as he put it, the diplomats on the ground, Foreign Office staff on the ground, but those higher up. In his words, Philip Hammond was a waste of space. So those people attacking Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, why not be consistent and say, well, he's being ungrateful? Could it be because she has dual citizenship? They see her as less British, whereas these guys were former soldiers. There might be something in that. I think the criticism is a bit unfair, and the government itself has said that that is misplaced. Jeremy Hunt, himself a former foreign secretary, has said, the criticism is wrong, and in a democratic society, she has a right to ask questions. And as he put it himself, we need to answer those questions. So to those attacking her, I would say just hold your horses. Just try and consider that this woman has been through this terrible, terrible ordeal. It's a legitimate question. Now, if she continues with this, if she wants to be a public figure and she sort of makes a really big thing of this, but she fails to condemn the Iranian regime that imprisoned her in the first place, then I would definitely have questions. I would say, why aren't you condemning the very regime that held you? You know, um, They're the villains, really. They're the ones that held you. So if she cannot do that, I would question her. But as for now, I'm saying, you know, people should be a little bit more understanding. This idea that she should just be totally grateful when it's a legitimate question. Yes, it's true that ultimately we helped secure the release by paying out the money, but that should have been paid out earlier. 6 years is a long time, so I think it is a legitimate question. Um, but like I say, if she doesn't at any point criticize the Iranian regime, I would definitely question that. And I think she will, rapidly lose sympathy if that becomes her position. There is a danger, of course, that she could now become a political figure because she's high profile. I think she would need to be careful about that and be careful with what sort of message she sends out. If she becomes an advocate for prisoners abroad, that would be a noble thing. But if she becomes a sort of political figure, um, it's her right in a democratic society, but I think she could lose a lot of sympathy, depending on what sort of angle she takes. Now, to get to the point about the other hostage who was held, um, incidentally, before I overlook it, there was a third man, a third hostage, and he is still out there, and we shouldn't forget him. Um, and let me just, I've got several pages open here, several windows open, so let me just get his name correct. Morad Tabhaz, I believe, is his name. He's a conservationist of Iranian descent, but holds British and American citizenship. He's still out there, and his family feel totally let down. It must have been a very bittersweet sweet thing for Nazanin and Anousheh Ashoori to be released, but then he's still out there. Um, Let me just double check that I've got that name right. Morad Tabhaz, yeah. British US national detained in Iran goes on hunger strike as family reveal they feel abandoned. Now, I hope behind the scenes at least the Foreign Office is working just as energetically in his case, especially again if it comes down to money. That's um, if it's something that we can resolve, we should. But of course, there's a grey area here, which is regimes like that in Iran. China does the same thing. Um, they can blackmail us, and it's basically hostage diplomacy. Whatever issues they have with the British government is not an excuse to take out on innocent British citizens on trumped up charges with no basis in fact. So I'm going to read out the case of Anousheh Ashoori. This is from The Guardian, and this is what it says. It's quite shocking. Iran made a Shuri family raise £27,000 in 12 hours to secure his release. The family, and the report is by Patrick Winter and Jamie Grierson. Family of the British Iranian detainee Anousheh Ashoori had to scramble at the last minute to raise £27,000 to pay a fine to the Iranian government, delivering the money in cash to the authorities in Tehran to in prison for it to be counted and authenticated. The Iranian government told British Foreign Office negotiators late on Monday that his release would be blocked unless a fine linked to his 10-year jail sentence was paid the following day. Ashoori was released along with Nazanin Zargari-Ratcliffe on Wednesday after the UK paid Iran a long-standing £400 million debt. Iranian authorities arrested Ashoori in August 2017 when he was visiting his mother. In August 2019, he was sentenced to 12 years in prison, 10 years for allegedly spying for Israel's Mossad, and 2 years for acquiring illegitimate wealth. Ashoori denied both charges. Shuri's wife, Sherry Asadi, told The Guardian, "We had less than 12 hours to raise the money, taking out loans using our credit cards and opening new accounts. My only thought was, how are we going to do this in time?" She added, "At first, the government officials in Tehran demanded my nephew meet them outside the prison with a suitcase full of cash, but he demanded he went inside the prison and be given a receipt. They kept dragging it out, demanding to count the money and check whether it was counterfeit." She also revealed that when she spoke to her husband in prison by phone on Monday, he had been sworn to secrecy by the Foreign Office and was unable to tell him that a negotiating team was in Tehran finalizing his release. He had been told that he was about to be conditionally released, but he did not believe it until he was on a plane. Similar promises had been made before. I could not tell him what I knew since I was told lives were at risk, she said. Elika Ashoori, daughter of Anousheh Ashoori, said they struggled to draw attention to her father's plight because the UK media did not see the family as very relatable. Speaking on BBC Radio 4's Today programme, Alika Ashuru said the family had experienced an outpouring of love since her father's return, but the last 5 years of his captivity have been very different and they had to fight for help. She said it has been a very big struggle trying to get my dad's name out there. We were slightly more successful in the last year of our campaign because of the efforts of Amnesty International and other organisations finally joined us, but because of his name, his age, his looks, us being grown up children, and us being not very relatable, we couldn't really engage on a major scale with the media and public no matter how hard we tried. The family, not wealthy, are planning a crowdfunding website to help them pay back the £27,000 debt. In Tehran, conflicting reports emerged about the fate of Morad Tabhaz, the British American and Iranian citizen, who the UK was unable to persuade Iran to release along with Ashoori and Zargari-Ratcliffe. Um, Distressed members of the Tabaz family claimed he had been taken back to Evin prison after only 48 hours on furlough at his family home in Tehran, but the UK Foreign Office said it had been assured by the Iranian government that he had gone to the prison only to have an ankle tag fitted that should have been installed when he initially left the prison. Foreign Office said any extended stay back in prison would be in breach of the undertakings given to the British government that the 69-year-old conservationist was being put on indefinite furlough. It added it was still working with the US to secure his permanent release. And let's hope that comes soon. Okay, that is a bit of a longer report. I thought it was a bit shorter actually, but I felt it was important to read it all out for context. Um, so a few things with that. I think optics is a big part of this, and it is a very cynical thing, and it's a very shallow thing. But the plight of a young mother is going to garner more interest in the British media than that of an older man with a difficult name to pronounce. That's a sad reality, and I think it's wrong, and I think it's very cynical of the media to just pick and choose which cases they take up. And I think they need to answer to that actually. You know, why is it that they give Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe's case more attention than Anousheh Ashoori? Um, she was in prison a bit longer. She was arrested in 2016, but it's a question why? Why do they pick and choose? I think it's very cynical and shallow. Um, the other question is, well, the other obvious thing here is, you know, putting this family under pressure. It's basically more like a mafia racket or some sort of criminal organization than the government. You've basically 24 hours to pay up. It's disgusting in my view. It's callous, it's cruel. Um, these are just ordinary people. They don't have that sort of money. It's luckily they did get it, but only from working around the clock ostensibly to raise that with crowdfunding and so on. Um, but basically, um, you know, pay up. Otherwise, I mean, you have to wonder if they could only raise £26,800, would he still be languishing in prison? Other totalitarian states engage in similar behavior. I mean, in the case of China, it's not necessarily the Chinese government, although certainly hostage diplomacy is part of their approach. But in China, you have to be very careful as a foreigner because it's not a particularly dangerous country in terms of crime or terrorism or anything like that. But if you find yourself in some sort of misunderstanding, say, for example, a common scam is older people will pretend to fall over, then their family will demand ransom money. They basically blackmail you. And the police know this, but Chinese police are corrupt. So what they will do is basically say, "Oh well, pay up the fine. It's not our problem." Um, I know of an American woman, because she had some issues with her visa. A normal circumstance would be to perhaps pay a fine or, perhaps be deported. But they basically blackmailed her and kept trying to extort money from her family, which had to be wired through. And there wasn't even like a fixed amount, like this is the fine. It was, oh well, we'll see how much we can get. It's reprehensible. And you don't see the same situation in the West. I mean, if we have an Iranian prisoner, we don't basically say to the Iranian, uh, his or her family, pay up the money and we'll release him. It's a very, in my view, callous way of doing things. There should be due process. Um, I mean, if this man had any guilt whatsoever that he was a so-called Mossad agent, Iran would have produced it. They would have said, we have solid evidence this man is spying for Israel. We would have produced it. But they failed to do so. I think it's very obvious that they picked him up along with Nazanin, Zargari-Ratcliffe, and probably this third man as well, Morad Tabhaz, as basically pawns to basically blackmail the government to pay up this money. And that's reprehensible, utterly reprehensible. I frankly don't believe anything that a regime like that would allege because they're so corrupt, morally and literally corrupt. It's basically no due process. So it's great that two of these people have been released, but I just hope his release comes very soon. Um, and as for Mrs. Ratcliffe, I think that again, people need to be more understanding. This is a woman who's been through hell. Her question's legitimate. Why wasn't she could have been released early if this was paid up? But like I say, if she doesn't condemn the Iranian regime and if she sort of starts getting political, I think public sympathy will be lost. So that's something to consider.